Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
AG-Pro and AG-Pro. What's the difference? With the first AG-Pro variation being found here on the Nike Hypervenom Phantom 2 Elite, a football boot that retails for $250. And the alternate variation being found on the Nike Mercurial Vapor 14 Elite, also with a retail price of $250. Unfortunately, these variations in AG stud patterns are tied to their specific model. So if you want this one, you have to buy a Phantom GT, and if you want this one, you have to buy either the Mercurial or the Tiempo, which features a very similar AG stud pattern. The question is, why does Nike make two different layouts for artificial grass? Which one is better? What are the differences? All of these questions and more answered in today's comparison. And if you are by chance interested in a pair of Nike AG boots for yourself, you can check out the links down below in the description. Those are going to take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes to pick these up below their normal retail prices. As always, if you guys do end up enjoying the content, I'd really appreciate a like. And if you don't want to miss out on future videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification. With that said, let's get right into it. So the first thing I feel the need to explain is that this technically is the older AG layout from Nike, and this is technically the new AG layout that's actually older than this one, even though it looks like this is the direction that Nike's currently going in. I realize that doesn't make a lot of sense. What I mean by that is if you go back 10 years or so, you would find that Nike's AG-R stud patterns were very similar to what they're now reintroducing as all new in the current Mercurial and latest Tiempo, where the Phantom GT2, while technically a new model, obviously recycles a lot from the previous Phantom GT, which falls into a time for Nike where all of their AG-Pro stud patterns pretty much look like this. It looks like they are swapping away from this and back into this older, kind of more AG specific stud pattern, if that makes any sense, which it doesn't, because this is also supposed to be an AG specific stud pattern. Let me explain. When we look at the AG Pro stud pattern found on the Phantom GT2, if you don't know your football boots, you probably wouldn't even guess that this was made specifically for artificial grass. And the reason for that is you can see it's a pretty traditional layout with 4 studs in the heel, 4 studs on the lateral side of the forefoot, 4 on the medial side, and then some support studs in the middle. The only thing that's a little bit strange is the hole through the middle of the studs, and perhaps the length of the studs as you get closer to the tip of the toe. They're quite short versus what you'd find on most traditional FG stud patterns. Nonetheless, what you're going to find with this AG Pro layout is that the studs themselves have a little bit of give to them, which is why they're hollowed out in the middle, and the shorter length as well as dispersion of the studs, which is actually more significant than what you're going to find from Nike's regular FG models, other than maybe the Tiempo, is designed to disperse pressure underneath your foot to make the boots more comfortable and obviously avoid the issue of stud pressure. The reason for the conical design is for use on artificial grass, which is a very clingy and abrasive surface. It still allows you that freedom to twist and pivot, which is why you don't find blades like you would on the FG version of the Phantom GT, as well as the FG version of the Nike Mercurial, which not only makes this better overall from a performance standpoint for use on artificial grass because your foot is never stuck in the ground and you'd lose that freedom to twist and pivot, but it's also so much safer in terms of reducing your risk of injury. I've talked about this so many times on the channel, but having too much grip on artificial grass dramatically increases your potential for getting injured because of the stud pattern on your football boots. This helps to avoid that. So while this AG Pro layout is great for use on artificial grass and certainly performs the part as well as provides the safety that you would want from an AG stud pattern, I think what many would argue as kind of a benefit of this layout versus the newer one found on the Mercurial is this has FG AG capability. You can wear this on natural grass playing surfaces, and as long as the ground isn't too soft, you're going to get traction that is very close, if not the same, as a lot of other FG football boots, which means that you're buying one pair of football boots to play on both natural and artificial grass rather than two, which is more or less what you would need if you went for this as your AG layout. This is not a great stud pattern for use on natural grass. I've never really been a big fan of the whole FG-AG thing. I feel like it's been very much a misleading marketing term by a lot of brands, and while this technically isn't FG-AG, this AG-Pro layout, if there were ever a true FG-AG stud pattern, I think it's this one. And if we remember back to the Neymar at Nike days, he actually wore this stud pattern on his Mercurials rather than the FG one, despite pretty much always playing on natural grass. Where the AG-Pro layout found on the Mercurials as well as the Tiempo is a much more committed stud pattern in terms of being specialized for one playing surface, that playing surface of course being artificial grass. You'll notice that the studs themselves are pretty short across the board, a little bit longer in the heel, but in general, they are designed for a playing surface that is relatively shallow, like artificial grass. You don't need super long studs. The second thing you'll notice is that there are way more studs under your foot with these versus the Phantom GT AG layout, and that's simply to, again, distribute pressure evenly across the bottom of your foot, which from a comfort perspective is just superior to that other layout in my opinion. What's also great about these studs is you'll notice they're made entirely a rubber material with the hollowed out core, so they have a little bit of flex to them. It's a little bit softer than what you're going to find on the Phantom GT, which means that they're not going to be too clingy. They're not going to lock your foot into the ground, which from a safety perspective, which is really the main reason why I would choose to wear an AG stud pattern on artificial grass, really makes this the safest AG layout out of pretty much everything currently available, which for me is a gigantic selling feature. Artificial grass is such an abrasive surface that it really doesn't matter what stud pattern you wear, traction is never going to be an issue, but the issue of having too much traction is where artificial grass can become a much more dangerous playing surface versus natural grass, where dirt, when you dig in deep enough, will break out, and that's why you end up slipping and falling, which more often than not can actually save you from an injury. I know slipping and falling is typically viewed as a bad thing, but when you can't slip on artificial grass, your ankles, your knees, your hips are basically subject to all of that force, which can lead to very serious injury. A stud pattern like this is designed to avoid those situations where your foot is stuck in the ground. And while it doesn't have the duality of this AG-Pro layout in terms of really being FG-AG, I think when you're talking about high-end football boots in general, we buy them for better quality, we buy them for a better fit, a certain feel, but I think more often than not, the performance characteristics is something that we as consumers are really after. And while I think this works great on artificial grass, I really appreciate how targeted this design is for use on artificial grass. It's a truly specialized design that really works best on artificial grass and nothing else. I think when you're talking about better performance and better feel on AG, this is simply better than this. But if you want something that's gonna work on natural grass as well, this just isn't a great choice. On feet, and this is something that I think Nike does better than every other brand when it comes to their AG stud patterns, is that these boots fit and feel just like the FG ones would. They give you the same sole plate base, so you still have the anatomic shaping at the bottom of the Mercurials, and the general silhouette of the boot does not change despite the stud pattern variation. As far as the overall fit and feel is concerned, you're not really going to notice a huge difference underfoot, although if you are standing on artificial grass, certainly in the Mercurials, you're going to notice that you are lower to the ground and you're just not going to have stud pressure. The same thing goes for the Phantom GT2, although this AG-Pro layout, the studs obviously aren't as short as what you're going to find on the ones here on the Mercurial. Nonetheless, from a stability and traction perspective, these are both kind of ideal for use on artificial grass. As far as the overall fit of the boots are concerned, again, exactly the same as the FG model. So the Mercurials have a nice tight wrap around your foot. Not to say that they are so narrow that they're only going to fit people with narrow feet, but if you've worn Mercurials in the past, you kind of know what to expect. As long as you like that tight fit and your feet aren't ridiculously wide, they're going to suit most people. Where the Phantom GT is definitely wider through the heel and midfoot, and then kind of pinches in towards the forefoot and toe box area. Not in love with the shape of the Phantom GT2, but again, it's one of those boots that's going to fit most people quite well. And then as far as sizing is concerned, that too does not change with the AG variations. The Mercurials just straight up run true to size, where the Phantom GT2 does run a smidge long, but not enough to where I would recommend going down in size. For me, I'm wearing both of these boots in my usual size 9.5 US, and as long as your boots aren't huge already, you can probably get away with going true to size in either of these two football boots. And there you have it. That's pretty much a complete breakdown of Nike's two different AG-Pro offerings and really what the differences are between them. It would be amazing if you could get both variations on any of their three lines of football boots. Unfortunately, that's not possible. So if you really like this one, you're kind of stuck with getting a Phantom GT2, where if you really like this one, you have to choose between the Mercurial and the Tiempo. For me personally, if I'm just playing on artificial grass, I think this is the better layout. But if I really was on a budget and only wanted to buy one pair of football boots to use on both artificial and natural surfaces, there's no question in my mind that this is the one to go for. Nonetheless, these are two of the very best AG stud patterns on the market. But if you're talking about number one and number two, for use specifically on artificial grass, as the name would suggest, this is the one I would pick.